The forbidden lab. It was raining heavily in the mountains of Nevada. Lightning flashed across the sky as a black helicopter landed near an old, hidden research facility. This lab, known only to a few people in the government, had suddenly gone silent. No calls, no data, no signals, like it had disappeared. A special recovery team stepped out of the helicopter, dressed in dark armor and carrying weapons. They moved quickly through the broken gates and into the damaged building. The lights inside were flickering, glass was shattered, and blood was on the walls. It looked like something terrible had happened, but there were no bodies. No alarms, no signs of a fight, just silence until they reached the basement. There, lying on the cold floor, was a woman in a lab coat, unconscious. Her name tag read, Dr. Elena Grace. She was the lead scientist of the lab, and the only person found. One of the soldiers checked her pulse. "She's alive," he said, "but she's in shock." As they lifted her up, they noticed something strange, a glowing scar on her stomach. Like something had been planted or removed. The team didn't understand what it meant, but someone watching from the shadows did. A tall figure, not fully human, silently slipped away through a hidden tunnel under the lab. It was the only thing that escaped the disaster. It wasn't here to destroy. It had come to create. 3 hours later, back at the Pentagon, top officials watched the lab's surveillance footage. They saw panic, alarms, and then nothing. One moment the lab was full of scientists. The next it was empty, except for one camera feed labeled Genesis Room. In this video, they saw something shocking. A silver-skinned alien stepped out of a glowing pod. It looked confused, weak, and afraid. Scientists surrounded it, talking quickly, testing, recording data. The alien looked at them, then at the large screen showing the words, Project Genesis, Human Reproduction Trials. Then suddenly, the video glitched, and the screen went black. The file ended there. Only one file had been stolen from the lab's database, Genesis. The officials were silent, confused and scared. This wasn't an attack. This was something else. Something deeper. What if it's trying to reproduce? One officer asked. But why with humans? Another whispered. No one had answers. Meanwhile, 50 miles away, in a small city, a strange man walked into a cheap hotel. He looked human, too human, perfect skin, symmetrical face. But his eyes were cold. The receptionist smiled. Name? The man paused, thinking, then said, Eli. It was the first human word he ever spoke. He paid in cash, took his key, and walked to his room. Inside, he removed a small device from his coat. It glowed blue, showing a strange 3D model of a woman. It was Dr. Elena, the scientist he had touched before escaping. He looked at her data, her DNA, her emotions, her memories. He was trying to understand something no alien had tried before, human reproduction. Not to copy it, but to feel it, to become part of it. Over the next few days, Eli watched humans carefully. He sat in cafes, listened to couples talk, watched mothers and children. He even downloaded dating apps and studied romantic behavior. But there was a problem. He didn't feel anything. No connection, no emotion, no spark. Until he saw her, a young woman named Sarah, working at a hospital across the street from his hotel. She smiled at a child, laughed with an old man, helped a stranger pick up fallen books. She had warmth, something he couldn't understand but wanted to feel. That night, Eli looked at her photo on his device and said, "She might be the one." The device blinked, analyzing her DNA and profile. Compatible, it said. He had found the subject, not for a test, but for creation. But what Eli didn't know was that someone else was watching him too. Agent Liam, from the Department of Extraterrestrial Affairs, had found strange energy signals near the hotel, signals that only came from alien tech. He set up surveillance, ready to strike. But when he saw Eli watching Sarah, he paused, confused. Is he trying to date her? Liam whispered. This mission was not what he expected, and it was just beginning. Asterisk, the new guy in town. Eli had never felt this kind of curiosity before, for most of his life. If it could even be called that, he had lived among silence, order, and logic. His species never needed emotions, never needed love, never even spoke with their mouths. They shared thoughts through energy. Cold and clean, but Earth was loud, messy, unpredictable, and strangely beautiful. As he stood in front of the mirror in his hotel room, Eli adjusted his appearance, skin smooth, hair neatly styled, clothes freshly bought from a nearby mall. He practiced human smiles, but they always looked a little off. Still, he was learning fast. Today was the day he would begin his experiment. Not in a lab, in real life. Across the street, Sarah stepped out of the hospital doors, her shoulders tired but her eyes bright. She worked long hours as a nurse, helping others even when she had nothing left to give. Eli watched her from a distance, not with creepy intentions, but with a scientist's focus and a childlike wonder. He didn't know why she mattered, only that she did, when Sarah passed by. His side of the street, Eli did something strange. He waved. Sarah blinked in surprise, then smiled and waved back. She had no idea that her life had just taken a turn no human could ever imagine. Later that evening, Eli sat in a small coffee shop where Sarah often came. He had learned from his research that coffee shops were where humans connected. So he sat at a corner table, pretending to read a book about emotions. When Sarah entered, the shop seemed to light up, not literally, but in a way Eli felt deep inside his artificial skin. She noticed him, gave a polite nod, and sat at the table next to his. Eli felt nervous. Not fear, but a strange rush in his chest. He turned to her and spoke carefully. "Excuse me, is this coffee any good?" Sarah looked surprised, then laughed. "It's terrible, but it helps keep me awake," she said with a grin. Eli smiled too. This time, it looked almost natural. They talked for 15 minutes. About coffee, hospitals, books, and the city. He listened closely to every word, every laugh, every pause. He recorded all of it in his memory, not as data, but as something more. Meanwhile, Agent Liam sat in a surveillance van parked a few blocks away. He watched the video feed from a drone hovering above the coffee shop. "Target is interacting with a human female," his partner said. Liam narrowed his eyes. "He's blending in too well," he replied. "Too human." Liam had seen many alien threats, but this one was different. There were no weapons, no explosions, no mind control. Just a man, or something like a man, trying to fall in love. Still, he couldn't take chances. He marked Sarah as a person of interest. If she got too close, she could be in danger, or worse, used for something not even the alien understood. Back in the coffee shop, Eli asked Sarah, "Do you always smile at strangers?" She shrugged playfully. "Only the weird ones," Eli laughed, unsure if it was a compliment or not. Sarah looked at him for a moment, then tilted her head. "You're not from around here, are you?" Eli hesitated, then answered, "No, I come from very far away." Sarah chuckled. "Yeah, I can tell." She had no idea how true that was. Over the next few days, Eli and Sarah met more often, sometimes at the coffee shop, sometimes on park benches. She told him about her childhood, her dreams, her heartbreaks. Eli shared little, only what he learned to say from the internet. But every time they talked, something inside him grew. It was not just knowledge, not just data. It was something warmer, something his species had never needed before. Connection. One evening, as the sun set behind the skyline, Sarah leaned back and said, "You're strange, Eli, but in a good way." He looked at her quietly. "Do you trust me?" he asked. Sarah paused, then nodded. "Yeah, I do." That word, trust, echoed inside him like a signal. He didn't know what would happen next, but he knew that something inside him had already changed. In the shadows of the city, Agent Liam tightened his grip on his tablet. Satellite scans had confirmed a small surge of unknown energy coming from Eli's hotel room. Energy similar to what was found in the Forbidden's lab. He had enough evidence to act, but he hesitated. Something didn't add up. This wasn't a mission anymore. It was a choice to attack first, or to understand later that night. Eli returned to his hotel room and activated his alien device. Sarah's DNA report floated in front of him, glowing softly. It showed complete compatibility, emotional and physical. The final phase of Project Genesis was ready to begin. But Eli looked at Sarah's picture one more time and whispered, "I don't want to use her." For the first time, the alien didn't just want to complete the mission, he wanted to belong. First touch. Eli had read hundreds of books about love. He had scanned thousands of videos, studied human relationships, observed every expression and gesture, but nothing had prepared him for the way it actually felt. The first time Sarah accidentally touched his hand while passing him a coffee mug, his entire body reacted, not with fear, not with logic, but with something new, a soft jolt, like a spark of light moving through his skin. His body wasn't designed for this. His kind had no physical closeness, no warmth, no touch. But now here he was, standing still, his hand tingling from the lightest brush of human skin. He looked at her, confused, and asked, "What was that?" Sarah laughed. Gently. "What?" "Just a touch." But for Eli, it felt like a signal had been activated. Something ancient, something forbidden, something beautiful. Later that day, Eli sat in his hotel room, shirt off, staring at the glowing veins spreading across his arm. It only started after Sarah touched him. His skin was shifting, adapting, changing, not into something alien but something more human. His device scanned the reaction and blinked in warning. Emotional energy levels unstable. It read. He ignored it. For the first time, he didn't want control. He wanted to feel. The next evening, Sarah invited Eli to a small event at her friend's house. It was a birthday party. Cake, music, laughter, kids running around with balloons, simple, noisy, human. Eli had never been inside a real home before, and everything fascinated him. The warmth of the walls, the smell of food, the way people touched each other's shoulders when they laughed. He watched them like a child discovering the world. When Sarah introduced him, people asked questions. Where was he from? What did he do? What brought him here? He gave simple answers, practiced ones, half-truths wrapped in smiles, but one thing he said was honest. "I came here to find something real." They thought he was being poetic. He was just being honest. At one point during the party, the lights went off for a moment. Kids screamed playfully, adults laughed, and Eli stood still in the dark. Suddenly, Sarah took his hand to guide him to the balcony. That second touch was stronger than the first. Eli's senses exploded. Sounds became clearer, colors brighter. The world around him slowed down, but inside something sped up. Heartbeat, thoughts, signals, all racing. On the balcony, Sarah looked at the sky and smiled. "You ever just stop and watch the stars?" she asked. Eli looked at the stars, cold, familiar, distant. "No," he replied softly. "Where I come from, the stars are just numbers." Sarah turned toward him, her expression soft. "Then maybe it's time you start seeing them differently," she said, touching his chest lightly, right where his heart should be. He didn't move, didn't breathe. For the first time in his existence, Eli wished he had a real heart, just so he could feel it break, beat, or melt under her touch. Across the street, Agent Liam sat in his car, watching the house through binoculars. He saw Sarah and Eli together on the balcony, smiling, talking, touching. "This isn't just an alien experiment," he said into his recorder. "This is something else." His team had intercepted strange energy readings again. Every time Eli made physical contact with Sarah, those readings grew stronger. Not deadly, but powerful, unnatural, yet somehow peaceful still. Liam couldn't trust it. He made a call. "Prepare extraction team." But something inside him whispered, "What if this alien isn't here to harm us?" The next morning, Sarah woke up to find a small gift outside her apartment door. A single white flower inside a glowing glass tube. She didn't know it came from a planet 10,000 light years away. She thought it was beautiful. She thought it was Romantic, she texted Eli. You're strange but sweet. He stared at her message, not knowing how to respond, not with data, not with logic. So he wrote back, slowly, carefully. I think I'm changing, because of you. Back in his room, Eli's device began flashing red. A message appeared in his native language. Emotion levels critical. Terminate mission immediately. But Eli closed the device, turned away from the warnings, and whispered to himself, I don't want to terminate anything. He looked in the mirror. His reflection was no longer fully alien. His eyes were softer, his skin warmer, his voice more human. He touched the spot on his chest where Sarah had touched him the night before, and for the first time ever. He smiled without practicing it. Discovery. For a while, everything felt normal, too normal. Sarah and Eli started spending more time together. Walks in the park, quiet dinners, silent glances that said more than words. Sarah didn't ask too many questions, and Eli didn't give many answers. But behind the smiles, behind the laughs, something was building, a feeling, a truth, a secret that refused to stay hidden. It started with the mirror. One morning, Sarah stood at her bathroom sink brushing her teeth. Eli was standing behind her, talking softly about breakfast, but when she looked up, something was wrong. In the mirror, Eli's reflection was blurry, like static on a screen. His face shifted, not much, just for a second, but enough to make her freeze. She turned around quickly, and there he was, smiling like everything was fine, human, calm, normal. But her heart skipped a beat. Eli, she said slowly, are you okay? He tilted his head, studying her expression. Yes, why do you ask? She forced a smile and said nothing more, but inside, her mind raced. Later that day, she opened her laptop and searched one quiet question. Can someone not have a reflection? The results didn't help. Myths, horror stories, vampire jokes, nothing real, nothing scientific. So she closed the screen, but her curiosity had already awakened. Meanwhile, Eli was sitting on the rooftop of his hotel. Watching birds fly by, he felt lighter, freer, more alive. He hadn't reported to his people in days. He no longer cared about the mission. He only cared about Sarah. Her voice, her touch, her laugh, they were now part of his system. He thought about telling her the truth, but every possible outcome in his mind ended with the same result. She would run, and he would lose the only thing that ever made him feel human. Across town, Agent Liam was reviewing the latest data. He had picked up strange energy readings again, not from Eli's device, but from Sarah's apartment. It was impossible. Humans didn't emit that kind of signal, unless something is growing inside her, he whispered. He rushed to his terminal and pulled up Sarah's recent hospital scans. Nothing alarming at first glance, but then he spotted it. A cell, not human, not alien. Both Liam's eyes widened. Oh, no, he muttered. He's not just studying her. He's already begun. Back at Sarah's apartment, she was cleaning the kitchen when she dropped a glass by mistake. It shattered across the floor, and a sharp piece cut her hand. Eli rushed to help, grabbing her hand gently. But the moment his skin touched her blood, something flashed between them. A surge of energy, invisible but real. Sarah gasped, pulling away. Her hand was glowing just for a second. Then, nothing. The cut was gone, completely healed. She stared at her palm, then at Eli. His expression was unreadable. What are you? She whispered. Silence filled the room, thick like fog. Eli looked at her with eyes that weren't fully human anymore. Didn't mean to lie, he said softly. I just wanted to feel what it's like to be loved. Sarah stepped back slowly, heart pounding. You're not human, she said, her voice shaking. Eli didn't answer. He didn't have to. His silence said everything. Her hands trembled, but she didn't run, not yet. Why me? She asked, tears in her eyes. Eli stepped forward, not to threaten, but to explain. Because you were kind, he said. You were honest, and you made me feel something I've never felt before. I came here to complete a mission, but now I don't want to complete it. I want to stay. Sarah looked into his eyes, searching for a lie. But all she saw was sadness and maybe truth. Then came the knock at the door, 3 loud bangs followed by silence. Sarah turned toward it slowly. Eli's body stiffened. He could feel the energy outside. Agents. He looked at Sarah with desperation. You have to trust me, he whispered, but before she could answer, the door burst open. Smoke, lasers, shouting. Everything moved fast. Sarah screamed. Eli grabbed her hand and pulled her into the bedroom. Kicking open the window, they jumped, landing hard in the alley below. Sirens screamed above them, red lights flashing in the sky. Eli turned to Sarah, breathing heavily. They know, he said. They're coming for both of us. Sarah looked at him, hurt, scared, confused. And then she whispered something that made Eli freeze. I think I'm pregnant. The truth hurts. Sarah sat on the cold ground of an empty warehouse, her back against a rusted metal wall. Rain poured through holes in the roof, each drop echoing like a ticking clock. Her hands were shaking, her heart pounding. Eli knelt in front of her, silent, waiting. Neither of them spoke for several minutes, not because they had nothing to say, but because the words were too heavy. Too real, too painful. I don't understand, Sarah finally whispered. I was careful, always. Eli looked into her eyes, guilt written across his face. This wasn't supposed to happen, he said quietly. My species. We reproduce differently. It's not physical, it's energy-based. I didn't need to touch you like humans do. You only had to feel something for me. Sarah covered her face with her hands, confused, scared, and overwhelmed. You're saying I got pregnant just by trusting you? Eli lowered his head, ashamed. Yes, he replied. Your emotions allowed the connection. And now, part of me is inside you. Silence returned, broken only by the soft sound of thunder. Outside, Sarah stood up, took a few steps back. You used me, she said, voice shaking. You came here, pretended to care, just to complete your experiment. Eli looked up at her, his voice soft but firm. That was true at first, but you changed me. I didn't expect to feel what I felt. I didn't expect to fall in love. Sarah laughed bitterly, wiping tears from her face. You don't even know what love means. You downloaded it from the internet. Eli stood up slowly. No, I didn't learn it from the internet, he said, stepping forward. I learned it from you. You showed me how love feels when you laughed with me, when you trusted me, when you didn't run, even after seeing what I was. Sarah's breathing slowed, her anger turning into confusion. Inside her, something strange was happening. She felt warm, then cold, then dizzy. Her hand instinctively touched her stomach. It wasn't just a feeling anymore. It was real. Something was growing, something alive. Far away, in a dark operations room, Agent Liam stood in front of a large screen showing a pulsing blue signal. The embryo is active, one of his team members said. Liam clenched his jaw. He had followed hundreds of alien cases before. None had involved something this human. She's not infected, he said aloud. She's carrying something new. We can't treat her like a threat. But his superiors disagreed. Bring her in, the order came. We can't risk what's inside her. Back in the warehouse, Sarah looked at Eli, her voice trembling. What happens now? Eli paused, then answered. Now. They'll come for us. They'll want to take you, study you, maybe destroy what's growing inside you. But I won't let them. I will protect you, even if it costs me everything. Sarah sat down again, her hands pressed against her stomach. I don't even know if I want this, she whispered. Eli sat beside her, looking up at the leaking roof. I didn't want to exist either, he said, until I met you. Hours passed and night fell outside. Black vans moved silently through the streets. Government drones scanned rooftops and alleys. The hunt had begun inside the warehouse. Sarah suddenly winced in pain. A sharp pulse moved through her stomach. Eli rushed to her side, placing his hand near her skin. She's reacting, he said in shock. She? Sarah asked, eyes wide. Yes, Eli replied softly. It's a girl, and she's growing fast. Suddenly, the warehouse lights exploded. A blinding white beam burst through the side wall, followed by shouting, footsteps, and laser sights. Step away from the human, a voice demanded. Eli stood in front of Sarah, shielding her. I won't let you take her, he said, glowing softly, his body turning silver and blue. Agent Liam stepped out of the shadows, weapon drawn but not firing. He looked at Sarah, then at Eli. You had a choice, Liam said. You could have escaped alone, but you stayed. Why? Eli didn't blink, didn't hide. Because they both matter, he said. Sarah and the child. Liam lowered his weapon. Behind him, the other agents looked confused. This wasn't war. This was family. Suddenly, Sarah screamed in pain, clutching her stomach. The glow from her body began to spread. Eli knelt beside her, placing both hands on her shoulders. She's coming, he whispered. But it's too early. Liam stepped forward. Uncertain, what do we do? He asked. Eli looked at him with fear in his eyes for the first time. I don't know, he said. We've never done this before. What is growing inside? The warehouse shook with a strange vibration, not from the storm outside, not from the agents surrounding them, but from her, from the unborn child inside Sarah. Light was pulsing from her skin like soft waves, making the air around her shimmer. Sarah gasped in pain, her hands pressed tightly against her stomach. She's not just growing, Eli said, voice filled with awe. She's waking up. Agent Liam stood frozen, gun still in hand, but no longer pointed at Eli. He had seen alien weapons, alien creatures, alien viruses. But this was something else entirely. This was life, and it was changing by the second. Sarah's breathing became faster, her back arching as another pulse of energy burst through her body. The warehouse lights flickered again. Machines nearby short-circuited. Eli knelt beside her, placing his hand over her heart. I can calm her, he said, but I need to connect directly. Liam hesitated. What does that mean? Eli looked up, glowing lines now running along his arms and neck. I have to share my energy, he said. Half of her is me. She needs both sides to stay stable. Sarah looked up, sweat on her forehead, eyes full of fear and love. At the same time, do it, she whispered. Please. Eli placed his forehead gently against hers, and in that moment, the world went quiet. The glowing lines on both their bodies began to sync, pulsing in the same rhythm. Liam and the agents watched in silence, unsure whether to intervene or simply witness. And then, the energy stopped. The room went still. Sarah lay unconscious, but calm. Eli opened his eyes slowly, weak but smiling. She's okay, he whispered. She's resting. But deep inside Sarah, the child was not asleep. She was learning, growing, adapting, and listening. Hours passed, and Sarah woke up in a secured room within a hidden medical facility. She opened her eyes to see white walls, soft lights, and Eli sleeping beside her chair. Agent Liam stood near the window, arms crossed. We had to move you, he said. Too dangerous out there. Sarah sat up slowly, feeling stronger than she should have. I feel different, she said. Not just tired, stronger. Liam handed her a scan, her blood, her vitals, her energy readings. You're changing, he said. Your cells aren't fully human anymore. They're evolving. Sarah stared at the image on the paper, her heartbeat calm. And the baby? She asked. Liam hesitated. She's not like anything we've ever seen. She's aware. That night, while Sarah slept again, the lights in the room dimmed on their own. A small whisper filled the air, not spoken, but felt inside her mind. A voice said, Mama. Sarah's eyes flew open, tears forming without reason. Eli, she called softly. Waking him, she spoke to me. She called me Mama. Eli stepped forward, eyes wide. She's connecting faster than we expected. This means she's ready. But not everyone was celebrating. In the next room, scientists and government officials argued behind closed doors. She could be the next stage of evolution. One said, she could be the end of human control. Another warned, do we protect her, someone asked, or destroy her before she becomes too powerful? Agent Liam stood at the door, listening, conflicted. He had once believed his job was to neutralize threats, but now he wasn't sure what the real threat was. The next day, Sarah was taken for more tests. But the machines couldn't read her anymore. Everything short-circuited around her. Glass screens cracked without being touched. A doctor reached out to place a sensor on her belly. It flew from his hand before he could get close. The lights flickered again. She's protecting herself, Eli said, stepping between Sarah and the team. She's scared. She knows you don't trust her. And then, it happened. The room turned silent. As if time had stopped, everyone froze. Except Sarah. She could move, breathe, think. And then, in her mind, the child spoke again. Clearly this time, don't be afraid, Mama. I will protect you. In the other room, alarms blared, systems crashed, and the power grid failed. The child wasn't trying to hurt anyone. She was just too powerful to stay hidden. Too alive to be contained, as soldiers surrounded the room. Ready to act, Sarah stepped forward, holding her stomach. No more hiding, she said, voice steady. She is not a mistake. She is not a threat. She's my daughter, and I will fight for her. Agent Liam lowered his weapon slowly, and for the first time, he said the words no one else dared to say. Maybe she's not the future we planned for, but maybe she's the future we need. Human, enough? The world didn't change with fire or explosions. It changed in silence. It changed when a newborn child opened her eyes, and the entire building stopped breathing. Sarah lay in the hospital bed, exhausted but smiling. Eli stood beside her, weak but alive, his skin no longer glowing silver. He had given everything he had to protect them, and now in Sarah's arms was the result of that sacrifice. A child, wrapped in a soft blue cloth, sleeping peacefully. Her skin was light, her eyes a deep gray, and her heartbeat was strong. But she wasn't just human. She was something more. Something new. Outside the room, Agent Liam stood by the glass, watching the family he had once been ordered to destroy. The military was still waiting for his decision. Should they take the child, or leave her with Sarah and Eli? He remembered the old protocols: eliminate unknown life forms, protect the human race, no exceptions. But watching Sarah sing softly to her daughter, something inside him shifted. This wasn't a threat. This was hope. News of the birth was hidden from the world. The government locked the hospital, blocked communication, kept everything in the shadows. But even secrets have energy, and this child, she didn't belong to the shadows. She belonged to the light on. The third day, something strange happened. Doctors came to check her vitals. Before they touched her, their hands stopped mid-air, as if held by invisible strings. The machines flickered, then shut off completely. The lights dimmed, and the air grew still. Sarah looked down and whispered, "You're doing this, aren't you?" The child opened her eyes slowly and smiled, and then she spoke, not with her mouth, but directly into everyone's minds. "Please don't be afraid." Her voice was soft, pure, and impossible to ignore. Outside, Liam heard it too. He dropped his phone, stunned. The guards lowered their weapons, blinking. In confusion, it wasn't mind control. It was connection for the first time. They all felt it, what the child felt. Not anger, not hunger, not power, but peace, love, the need to belong. Eli walked outside the room and stood before the armed soldiers. His body weak, but his voice steady. "You came here to stop a threat," he said. "But what was born in that room is not a weapon. She's proof that life can evolve without fear, that two worlds can become one." The soldiers looked unsure, their fingers twitching near their triggers. Then Agent Liam stepped forward, slowly raising his hands. "No more guns," he said. "No more fear. She's not the end of us. She's the next step." Later that week, a small group of trusted scientists, doctors, and leaders gathered in a secret room to witness something unbelievable. The child, now named Arya, stood on her own. Even though she was just days old, she walked slowly to the center of the room and held out her hand. A flower grew from the floor beneath her feet, blooming where there was only metal before. She smiled, looked around, and said, "I don't want to rule. I just want to live." Tears filled Sarah's eyes. Eli held her hand, feeling lighter than ever before. Liam watched silently, nodding once to himself. They didn't need labs anymore, or weapons, or threats. They needed faith. Faith in something greater than fear. And so the world didn't end. It began again, quietly, in a locked hospital room, with a newborn child who was half alien, half human, but all heart. Was she human enough? Maybe not by science, not by law, not by blood, but in the way she loved, in the way she chose peace, in the way she held her mother's hand and smiled at the people once afraid of her. Yes, she was more than human enough.